Hi there. You're listening to the Everglade Chronicles, a reading. I'm Garrett Shave, the author. Today I'll be reading Chapter 5, A Dark Hero Rises. I hope that by now you have all acquired the gold edition of Memoirs of a Neighborhood Queen, the very edition I am reading on this podcast. If not, there will be a link in the description. Now let's get started. Friday came and the school emptied of its capacity. Like water breaking through a floodgate, we all made a mad dash from the school. Even the teachers looked relieved to have this sunny May afternoon off. I walked with my sister down the birch trail, meeting other children along the way. We were halted in a mass near the Bermuda Bridge. I looked ahead. Lady Chloe Mountbatten looked as if she had fallen. Her frilly summer dress was in heaves, and Cora Hastings was nursing a scratch on her knee. Lady Alice was standing nearby, remotely. She was with her own royal attendant, a girl named Kim Thorne. There were guards everywhere, brandishing their foam swords. As many as 20 kids were crowded on the bridge, held back by the guards. "Out of the way," my sister yelled. "General coming through, General coming through." She took my arm and we moved through the crowd. I noticed many children I knew, including Madison from the village. "What seems to have happened here?" Abby asked, concerned. "Her ladyship fell," Cora murmured aimlessly. She was tending to the small bloody wound on Chloe's leg. The poor girl looked as if she was about to explode with pain, but the scratch was minimal. "I swear I was pushed," Chloe said harshly. "I cannot merely slip and cut my knee on this bridge without someone pushing me." "Allow these children to go by," my sister commanded the sentry. "They've got work to do." The boys with their foam swords moved apart, and the mass of kids moved across the bridge quickly. I stood by, watching them march like herded cattle. "I'll see you later," Abby told me. "I've got some investigating to do, I suppose." She turned towards Chloe, who was rising to stand. I nodded and walked across the bridge. Madison Keystone was waiting for me, her arms crossed. "I saw a shady person nudge her ladyship," Madison said sharply. "Who knew that such a small cut would incite such madness over a bridge crossing? It looks as if the entire Queen's Guard is there." I could think of a few people who would want to bully a noble, but hardly a handful would take assertive action. The tension was thick. "Let's go to the village," I told Madison. His Grace was already there when we arrived, sitting on his wicker throne. Ben was prattling on about farms and numbers when I stepped into the royal grove. "It's about time you arrived," Hudson growled. He looked bored. Ben was silenced when I entered. "Hello, Jessica," Ben said with a smile. "I was just telling His Grace about our farms." "Quite boring, actually," Hudson replied. "I might take a journey to the capital." "Aren't you needed here, Your Grace?" I asked quietly. Hudson snorted. "I find it hard to believe my brother was able to spend all his time here in this dreary little village. The royal city is way more fun." "If it pleases your lordship." Benjamin bowed and scraped. He had a tendency to give the least person of authority the most courtesy with his bows. Hudson strolled by without another word, leaving us alone in the grove. "Why are you being so nice to him?" I inquired in a hush of a whisper. "With the mayoral titles hanging on a limb, I've got to make myself look resourceful," Ben confessed. "You will always be resourceful to us," I nearly yelled. "It is the Duke himself who is barely useful." Ben's eyes grew wide. "Don't let him hear that. You'll be executed." I nodded. Execution in our game was, well, the end game. If someone was executed by order of the Queen, they would restart the game. While their name would be the same, they would be lowered to the bottom of the chain, no matter how high they had been before. The same would happen if one were killed in battle. I should hold my tongue, but in truth the Duke is no good. I could feel my hands shaking. "Look at what I have become, Ben. I have been talking with Mark too much." Benjamin smiled. "Mark Glass is only fighting for what's right, his inheritance." "It is so much more than that, Ben," I replied, leaving the royal grove. While the children toiled in the fields, I walked along the path towards the capital. A large field flanked to my left, open and barren except for a few trees who were just beginning to open their green leaves. There were more shrubs and bushes near the entrance to our village, but they became sparse as I walked. The field had been home to many battles in its day, including the one that overthrew King Thomas. I stood and stared, fondly remembering the day I witnessed the triumphant Queen Venus riding her hobby horse, which had been white, and waving the king's crown around. There were a few dozen kids in the meadow that day, clapping and cheering. Her triumphant victory was nothing but a faded memory now, lost to time. The once great Venus had been replaced by an evil clone, but the twist in the story was that they were one and the same. My nostalgia was disturbed by the rattling of bushes. I turned sharply, adjusting my glasses. "Madison, is that you?" I asked. "Hardly," a familiar male's voice said. Rising from the bushes came Cale, the tall Irish boy. Oddly enough, he was without his twin today. "What are you doing slithering around like a viper?" I inquired. "Looking for you," he replied, dusting off his clothes. His green eyes sparkled. "There is something the agency wishes for you to know. Unfortunately, it isn't great news." "Do tell," I said urgently. "I'm sure you remember her ladyship, Lady Chloe, allegedly being pushed and scraping her knee?" "Yes, of course." "Witnesses say a tall dark figure did it," Cale continued. "Naturally, the tallest girl in the meadow has been apprehended and is in the big house as we speak." "Sassy Cassie!" I swallowed hard. "You don't think she could have done this?" Cale crossed his arms and shook his head rapidly. "Ha! Hardly. Sassy Cassie prefers to do her work without irritating the nobles on a physical level. For this, she stands to lose her head." "This is just awful," I murmured. "If we lost Cassidy, the entire organization would crumble." "I was told to tell you, simply because you've got connections," Cale remarked. "You've got a sister who's a general, right? Can't you talk to her? Get Sassy Cassie off the hook?" "I could try," I grumbled. Recently Abby had become more pro-monarchist since her promotion and was less likely to release a prisoner suspected of assaulting an aristocrat. "I can't promise nothing." "Queen Venus is less likely to give Cassidy a trial," Cale said quietly. "She's a commoner, a known troublemaker, and has been accused of assaulting a noble. The odds are against her." "I will at least make sure she has a trial," I said sharply. "I'm going to the capital right now. I will have a word with my sister." The royal city was booming with little children. There were a few guards as well, patrolling the streets. There were even a few soldiers recruiting the young ones. This was something I knew to be unusual. I knew the Queen was amassing an army, but recruiting the young ones so openly? On my way to the ministry, I found Cora Hastings standing near the slide. She was alone in a lilac frilly dress. Her face looked rather dreary, so I stopped to say hello. "Good day, Mistress Hastings," I said with a smile. Cora merely nodded in reply. "Good afternoon." "Something wrong?" I asked. "No, I don't think so," she replied almost silently. "My mistress has gone up to Queen's Summit, and I have not seen her for a while. She told me to remain here. It is not for my common ears to hear, I suppose." "I take it her ladyship is well enough to walk now?" Cora looked at me. Her silvery eyes glinted. She had a pixie cut of straw-colored hair. The scratch was basic. Now they have poor Sassy Cassie in chains because of it. I was with her the whole time and didn't see anyone push her. "I was just coming into town to have a word with my sister, General Abigail. I was hoping to get Cassidy out of the big house or at least a reduced sentence." Cora smiled a bit. She had small lips. "I would like to see that. Cassidy has done no wrong, but merely because she is of interest and a known criminal, they detain her automatically." Before I could stammer a reply, Lady Chloe was hollering from the base of the hill. "Cora!" I heard. "I'm ready to go." "I must leave," Cora said hastily. "It was nice speaking with you, Jessica." I dipped her a friendly curtsy and slipped into the jungle gym that acted as the ministry. I found Ryan swinging around and asked him where my sister was. Ryan could be described as cute. He had tannish skin, brown eyes, and brown hair. His figure was slender and I could see the potential for muscles in the future. "She's on a patrol around the south of the meadow," he replied. "Can I be of service?" "Perhaps," I replied, "but I would rather leave this bit for my sister. Do you know when she will be back?" "Likely within the hour. Increased tension in the Lost Forest has prompted Lord Schuyler to increase patrols in that area. We've already had 2 since school let out," Ryan explained. "Increased tension?" I wondered aloud. Ryan nodded and sat on one of the taller bars. "Several of our soldiers have been pelted with pine cones, believe it or not. The children of that forest are so disorderly. His Grace must pull them under the control, or the Queen will take swift action." "Well, Tyler Crest is no better than you or my sister," I said. "He's a soldier. He only knows how to take orders, not give them. He fought alongside you, didn't he?" While Ryan nodded, there was sharpness in his reply. "You should watch your tongue, Mistress Walker. I doubt anyone willing to listen would appreciate such treason against the Duke." I changed the subject. "Might I visit a prisoner?" Which one were you hoping to see? Cassidy? It will cost you a penny. I reached into my pocket and managed to pull out an old penny, handing it to the general. He took it happily and pointed. I would need to walk through a maze of metal bars before I came to a playground center where Cassidy was held. There was a pudgy guard on duty when I arrived, but he moved out of the way so I could enter the structure. Sassy Cassie was sitting on the bench that reached from one end of the room to the other. Above it was a large green slide. Therefore, the room itself was mostly plastic and green. The original purpose of this room was to replicate a castle's dungeon, which the playground designer had done well. Well, if it isn't the Miss Jessica Walker. Sassy Cassie was pleased to see me. She was hunched over, cramped in this small space. What brings you? It's a very long story, but I'm going to try and get you out. I hear you've been accused of a crime you didn't commit? That's right, Cassidy replied. Witnesses say I pushed Lady Chloe, but I wasn't even near the bridge when that happened. In fact, I was talking with Mark Glass. Cora Hastings says the same thing. She was with Lady Chloe when it all happened. I can always count on Cora to take my side, Cassidy smiled. But I stand to lose my head for this. How are you going to help out? Abigail Walker is my sister, I replied. She's a general now, and I was hoping to talk to her. Abby was the one who arrested me. My heart sank. I had not anticipated this. I'll think of something, don't you worry. If I don't, I'll just assure you that you will get your trial. Thank you, Jess, Cassidy said. I exited the prison and stepped back onto the paved asphalt trail. I adjusted my glasses and began to think. There was only one way I could think of to get Cassidy out, but it would risk everything. I rushed home as fast as I could. While the sun was setting, I transformed. My hair in pigtails, my lips lathered with red lipstick. I tied the silk around my eyes, my wrists, and small strands from each of my pigtails. I threw on a black turtleneck with black leggings. I was ready. Isis was ready. The royal city was quiet when I waltzed through, making sure I wasn't noticed. The guards had thinned out, since most of the kids had gone home to eat. I noticed my sister with some soldiers within the ministry and strolled over, staring at them. "Intruder!" one yelled, catching sight of me. "Who is that?" I heard Ryan yell. It was already too late. I was in motion. I had tied a string of water balloons along my waist. I reached for them and began tossing. While they grabbed for their foam swords, the water balloons made contact. One teen yelled, another dodged a balloon. I seemed to float along the bars and slid through. "Capture him, or her, or it," Ryan was shouting. Ever so quickly, I tossed a balloon at the sentry guarding Cassidy's cell. He nearly collapsed as his entire shirt became wet. Dropping his foam sword, I danced around him softly. For once, I was pleased that I had taken a year of dance and acrobatics and gym. I slid into Cassidy's cell and grabbed her. "Who are you?" she asked, confused. "A friend," I said quietly, my voice lowered. "We don't have much time." We made our exit, only to be met by more guards. Breathing deeply, I took hold of my last two balloons and tossed them. One was cut open by a Halloween axe, but the water splattered on the guard nonetheless. The other landed on the soldier's groin. I couldn't help but giggle as he grabbed for his privates. I pulled Cassidy over them as they collapsed together. We made a mad dash through the tangled bars and out the side. The ministry was a throng of excitement and confusion. They were reaching for flashlights now, and beams of light shot up into the sky. "Where did they go?" Ryan yelled. "The prisoner has escaped," I heard my sister say loudly. "We've got men down," another shouted. Cassidy and I ran past the royal city and into the bushes near the river. "Thank you very much," Sassy Cassie said between breaths. "You must tell me who you are, so I can invite you to become an agent." "I think that is best left a secret," I told her. "You must do me a favor and stay low for a while. I'm good at that," she replied. Before I left her there, she asked, "Do you have a name?" I smiled. "Call me Isis." That concludes Chapter 5, our readings for this week. Join me next time when we start Chapter 6, A Message from the Trees. I hope you have all been enjoying this podcast so far. Have a nice week! Shimmer by Captures provides the music. Find us online on Facebook by searching The Everglade Chronicles or at Everglade Chronicles on Instagram. I appreciate your support. If you're interested in purchasing any of the Everglade Chronicles novels, you can find them exclusively on Amazon. Thank you and see you next week.